We're going to deal with some issues that are of great concern to both landlords and tenants. We're here in one of the animal shelters. The city has 6 of them. We have one of the largest network of animal shelters in the country, and we hope that when you leave today, you might take some of our residents here home with you. But why we're doing these workshops, and we thank the housing department, because the housing department does all these workshops throughout the year on various aspects of the rent stabilization ordinance, and we raised this issue with them, and they were more than happy to take this on and do a month of pets and rental housing. Fact is that in the city of Los Angeles, we have a large number of renters, 64%. This is a city of renters. And we want to get these animals out of these shelters and make this a no-kill city. Well, if we're going to get them out of the shelter, they have to go somewhere into people's homes, and that's going to have to be, in a large extent, renters. And on that issue, there's a lot of concern by both tenants and landlords. I mean, landlords are concerned that bringing in animals are going to impact their apartments, and there's going to be destruction there. And tenants, on the other hand, don't want their animals to be used as an eviction tool. So we're going to present today on this issue. We have the housing department here, we have animal services here, we have the Housing Rights Center. I also want to introduce, and by the way, my name is Larry Gross. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Animal Services Commissioner. And one of my colleagues here today, Commissioner Alana Yanez is here. She's joining us. And so we are trying to get this information out to you so you know exactly where you stand, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, on what your rights are in regards to this. And hopefully, by doing this, we can open some doors to the animals in this shelter. And so I want to introduce a representative from Susan Gosden, who's with the LA Housing and Community Investment Department. We're going to go through this presentation. We ask you to hold your questions because some of these questions overlap the various presentations, and then we'll deal with any questions you'll have. So Susan, thanks.
Thanks, Larry. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out. I'm with the City of LA, and I work for the Housing and Community Investment Department. I'm with the Rent Stabilization Division, and what we primarily deal with is RSO, or the Rent Stabilization Ordinance. And what that is, and I'll just give you a brief history. In 1979, the Rent Stabilization Ordinance was enacted, and this was because there was a lack of affordable housing in the city of LA. And obviously now with the rent levels, you can tell that it still exists. The housing department, or the Rent Stabilization Division, has a section which handles tenant allegations of rent control, rent stabilization violations. They receive about 6,000 a year. The areas that it covers are typically, or the largest ones, are evictions and allegations of illegal rent increases. There's also reduction of services, where if you were provided a service at the beginning of your tenancy and it was taken away, you would need to be either have the service restored or your rent reduced. One example of that might be parking. We receive, I think I said, approximately 6,000 complaints. We have all different field offices, and what rent stabilization does, it just puts a cap on rent increases, and also there has to be limits reasons for evictions. If there are instances where tenants are evicted through no fault of their own, an owner might purchase a building and decide to move into your rental unit, or if they're going to remove the property and demolish it, those would be called no-fault evictions. And tenants would, while you can be legally evicted for that, The no-fault evictions come with a requirement to pay relocation to help ease some of the moving costs and moving into a new rental unit. As far as pets go, there are a few areas where the RSO does deal with pet-related issues. There's an area where it states that, specifically states that if a tenant has a pet and then the property is sold, the new owner cannot evict you for having a pet. And then there's also provisions too where rental agreements cannot be unilaterally changed and then the tenant evicted. So if you already have a pet in your unit and it was agreed to by the previous owner, a new owner or even the current owner can't just unilaterally change your lease and tell you that you have to get rid of the pet or you'll be evicted. Also, as Larry stated, we do, as part of our outreach, we do monthly free workshops. We do anywhere from 5 or 6, and on the back is this handout. While it's late in the year, these are the types of topics that we cover and the locations. So by signing in and leaving your email, we'll include you in our email blast, and so you'll get a monthly email of whatever our topic is for the month along with the locations, and there'll be links to the location and how to get there. Just to let you know, as Larry stated, we have one more pets and rental housing, and it will be in the West Valley this Friday, November 20th at 10:30, and it's listed on your flyer if you have any friends or family who are interested. And then in December, we'll be covering security deposit interest. The RSO requires that owners pay interest on tenants' security deposits. So there will be having 3 workshops on that, and feel free to attend. We welcome you. We'd appreciate it if you would call to RSVP so that we know how many people will be there. And now we're going to bring up the Housing Rights Center, who's going to, we'll talk about service and emotional support animals. And this is Yazmin from the Housing Rights Center.
Hello, everyone.
No.
All right. So we actually have a PowerPoint presentation for our portion of today's meeting, and we have a copy of it in the back for those of you who may have arrived late, in case you are an avid note taker like I am. But like Susan stated, we're here today, we're happy to be here to provide information about the Fair Housing Act, specifically as it relates to service animals and emotional support animals. So I'd like to start off just by introducing what our agency does and who we are, for those of you who may not be familiar. We have the name housing in our name, so we often get confused with the housing department, but we're not a part of that. We are a separate nonprofit agency, and we are dedicated to securing and promoting fair housing. So we've been around since 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed, and we provide a number of different services, which I'll be going over very quickly. But just for your information, we service all of LA County and Ventura County, and we're happy to provide any information for residents living in those areas. So as far as our services, we provide free landlord-tenant counseling, which is one of our more important services, meaning that whether you're a tenant or whether you're a landlord, if you have housing-related questions about landlord-tenant rights, you can go ahead and call in for free. Our contact information is on the green sheet in the back. And our counselors are readily available to answer those questions for you. And then they can also provide different types of handouts to other types of resources in the community. So if you have any questions related to housing, you can go ahead and call there. And then we also, more importantly, go ahead and investigate fair housing discrimination complaints. So if you are someone that feels you've been discriminated against in any sort of housing transaction, you can call in, and our investigations team can go ahead and look into that for you. We have a litigation department that can assist with those fair housing cases. And then lastly, we have our outreach and public education department, which is the one that I'm a part of as an outreach coordinator. And we do workshops like these. We do our own separate workshops. We go to community fairs and are just there as a resource for the community. And then lastly, I like to mention that we have a free rental listing. If you're looking for housing, or if you're a landlord that wants to post in our rental listing, you can also go ahead and call us and we can provide more information about that. But I'd like to just go ahead and get into the main portion of this presentation, which is the Fair Housing Act. And before we get into that, just letting you know that they apply in a number of different housing situations. So whether you're renting, which is what most people understand to be the protected area under the Fair Housing Act, but also if you're buying a home, if you're even seeking a loan to buy a home, or even if you're just looking. So you don't have to already be a resident in a building to be protected under the fair housing laws. If you're turned away from housing and you feel it was based on a discriminatory reason, that's already something that can be investigated. And then it applies in a number of different housing. So essentially any type of housing situation, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a condo, a duplex, residential, motels, mobile home parks, or vacant lots. And then we have several different types of protections under the fair housing laws, under the federal level, and also some additional ones as California residents. So at the federal level, we have our race, our color, our religion, our gender under the sex protection, our national origin, familial status, which refers to families with children or minors under the age of 18. And then we have disability, both mental and physical protections. And that's where we'll be going a little bit more in depth with in this presentation. And then under the state laws, we have some additional ones which include marital status, which include ancestry, sexual orientation, income source, and gender identity, gender expression, genetic information. So we're going to start talking about disabilities as they are defined under the Fair Housing Act, just to clarify what is included under that. So under the FHA, or the Fair Housing Act, a handicap means a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of the major life activities. So that includes seeing, walking, hearing, breathing, just being able to function in your day-to-day life. Performing manual tasks, caring for yourself, learning, speaking, any one of those things. And then to further define that for you, any physical or mental impairment can include things like orthopedic, visual, speech, and hearing impairments, cerebral palsy, autism, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, HIV, emotional illnesses, or even drug addiction and alcoholism. So these are all the things that are included under the Fair Housing Act that would be protected. And so when we talk about disability discrimination, we're often talking about reasonable accommodation or modification requests. So accommodation requests are those things that any changes in policies that are made, or any exceptions to rules that are made in a building in order to accommodate somebody with a disability. And so that's where you often see the service animal question come up, or the service animal request, let's say in a no pet building. And then the modifications refer to actual structural changes or modifications that are made in a building, right? So that's when you'll see a ramp added, that's when you'll see cabinets lowered, grab bars in the bathroom, any sort of structural changes that are made in a unit. But the most common accommodations that we see at our agency are changing rent due dates for people who may be receiving disability as their only source of income. And if their check arrives, the 10th and the rent is due on the 1st, it may be seen as a reasonable accommodation to go ahead and change that rent due date. Affording people parking spaces that are closer to their units if there's a mobility impairment. Transferring units for people if available. Being able to end tenancies early if something happens and they can no longer access their unit. Having live-in caregivers and not charging for, or not requiring that they be added to the lease. And then lastly, what we'll be talking about today is those service and emotional therapy animals that we'll be talking about. But when it comes to these accommodations and these modifications, they do have to be considered necessary and reasonable. So it can't just be any request for anything. Now, as far as showing proof of it being necessary, right? A tenant has to be prepared to show documentation for that animal. And that does not mean that they have to provide certification, right? So service animals usually will have a jacket or they receive some sort of certificate from their training. But emotional support animals don't have to receive any sort of certification. They just have to be providing a service. So as far as documentation for these animals, what the Fair Housing Act requires is that a medical professional with intimate knowledge of this person's disability write a letter that documents or can attest to the fact that there is a disability and that because of that disability, this specific animal is necessary for that person. But further than that, nothing else can be required. So as long as there's a letter from a medical professional, again, stating that there is a disability and that there is a need for that specific animal, then that is all that can be required as far as documenting the need for that. Now, just to quickly go over what the prohibited practices are for these service or emotional support animals, charging any sort of fees in order to have that animal, example, charging a pet rent or charging an additional pet deposit, prohibiting these animals from being in the common areas, requiring that the animal wear its jacket. Again, an emotional support animal might not have a jacket. Or requiring that this animal have some sort of training or otherwise receive some sort of certification. So if anybody here was denied the ability to have an emotional support or service animal, just know that at the Housing Rights Center, we are more than happy to help you with that kind of issue. Or if you have any further questions that aren't answered here today, or you know someone who may have questions, they can go ahead and call or visit our website for more information. Thank you.
My name is Mark Salazar. I'm the Director of Field Operations. Thank you for coming out. This is a really good show here today. And we just, again, a heartfelt expression, just thank you to our commission. From the top down, Animal Services, we care about animals. We care about being able to answer questions and be there for you and see the wonderful assortment of animals that we have in our 6 shelters find good homes, and we hope that you find good reason as a tenant to maybe be able to adopt and bring one in, or as a landlord to be able to find a new family member and bring home as well too. And certainly on behalf of our general manager, Brenda Barnett, she would say your parting gift today would be to please come back and adopt. So we would love to see that happen as well. So let's talk about pets and rental housing. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I would like to recognize, I don't see, Lieutenant Botta is here, but Officer Carrie Damasio, if we could give her a round of applause. She works very hard for you every day out on the streets and does a wonderful job caring for animals and bringing them in and making sure that they get into good homes. So again, we're going to go through this very quickly. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them for you afterwards. And let's get this going. Is it this one right here to the right? Okay. So a little bit about the department. Our mission and vision statement is to promote and protect the health and safety and welfare of animals and people of the city of Los Angeles. We envision the day when every pet born has a good home and is cared for all of its life, and no person is ever endangered by any animal. We have a number of different city, our department's broken up in different ways. We have field services, we have sheltering services, we have medical services, we have administrative services. These are 6 of our city shelters, and then we also have an administrative section downtown. Field services, which I oversee, we handle service calls that include anything from sick, stray, fighting animals, injured animals. We assist other agencies like Los Angeles Fire Department. We have rescue teams that go out and actually help assist them with rescues as well. Los Angeles Police Department, Health Department. We conduct investigations, animal neglect, abuse, cruelty, hoarding, fighting, permitting, licensing, all types of different investigations our officers do every day. We have 10 specialized teams that work in field services. Again, we're out there doing license canvassing, permits, zoos, not zoos, rodeos, sometimes it seems like a zoo, rodeos and pet stores and special types of events that have exotic animals. We have a wildlife division. We have an animal cruelty task force that actually has officers and LAPD detectives working together out of the Los Angeles Police Department to deal with more of the egregious type of animal offenses or offenses to animals. Training division, emergency management division. We do a lot of outreach. We go into schools, we come out to communities. If you would like us to come out and speak with you, we're happy to do so. Or with your folks at your, maybe if you're a tenant or as a landlord at your building. And then we have a rescue team, and we also have, which we find very, very valuable, is our partnership with the community, and that is a volunteer equine emergency response team. And they actually help us when there's a disaster on the hillsides for fires or floods or things like that, and we need to evacuate horses or large livestock. Our sheltering division handles intake and cares for various domestic, wild, and exotic animals. They handle strays and owners that turn in their animals. They are our lead for helping with adoptions and fostering. You walk into any of our shelters, you're going to be greeted, you're going to be welcomed, and you're going to hopefully find either your lost pet or a new family member. We have a New Hope program. It has over 200 different partners that we have here with the city that help bring animals out of our shelters and then help find homes as well. We have a fostering program, mobile pet adoptions, a volunteer program, which we encourage. One of our last couple of meetings, we actually had a landlord who actually is one of the great volunteers we have at our North Central shelter, and so it was really great for her as a landlord to talk about benefits and also seeing issues when tenants have to sometimes come in and feel like they need to turn in their animals, and yet she sees both sides of the table, and she provided some great input at that meeting. Clerical staff we also have, and our licensing and permitting fees. In the sheltering division, they also oversee our medical division, and we have registered veterinary technicians and veterinarians that do our intake exams, make sure the animals are healthy, provide some treatment, may even provide spare neutering surgery. And then when we have investigations that are cruelty type investigations, they will actually do the exams and testify in court. And then they also do microchipping along with the spay and neutering. Our administrative services downtown, you can actually license your animal downtown or get a breeder's permit. We have opportunities again for public relations. We have a public information officer now that also helps promote good information about what the department's doing. With our commissioners here, twice a month we're at commission meetings, and if you don't know this already, one of our commission meetings is always at a different shelter, so they rotate through the 6 shelters, so we come out to you as well. We do have a website and social media, so you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on, you name it. What else is out there?
The internet.
The internet. We do marketing, fundraising, and then we also apply for grants, all of these things to benefit the animals in our shelters and to help them find good homes. We have a hearing division that hears barking dog nuisance complaints and also hears dangerous animal complaints to help determine if there needs to be restrictions imposed on the property where the animals are kept. And what are pets? Pets are companion. I had to stop there because I always envision my own animals. And for those of you that have that animal, that when you get home every day, and for me, it's when my car hits the driveway or the garage door goes up, you just hear them giving that love on the other side of the door waiting for you. They're so much to me. Pets are companion animals that are kept primarily for a person's company or protection. Many are considered a member of the family, and if I can say more. During the economic downturn, when so many families were losing housing or downsizing, which included having to give up a companion animal, it was said that there was the most difficult sacrifice that the family had to make. It was demonstrated that children were able to accept a lot of changes if they had the security of their dependable and loving pet. So what are the benefits of animals to humans? They provide companionship. Elderly adults who otherwise have no social interactions. Emotional, provide support and unconditional love. Health, lower blood pressure, and decrease stress. And I just always stop because my heart goes out to some of our elderly in our communities. Sometimes it's just that animal that gives them that reason to get out of bed every day. And so there's so many benefits to having animals. Children exposed to pets are less likely to develop allergies. Children raised with animals tend to develop a stronger immune system, and they improve social skills. So people like to talk about their pets. If they're too shy to talk to or anything else Heart attack patients with pets tend to have better recovery rates. Dogs can be your personal trainer. Walking your dog increases losing or maintaining a healthy weight. Yes, I need to walk my dogs more often. Pets provide a sense of purpose for the elderly who care for them and also offer exercise opportunities. Pets boost overall mood and bring feelings of joy and happiness. Children learn responsibility and compassion. So here's something to take note of if you're a landlord. These are some real perks to think about allowing pets in your buildings. And that is service animals are categorized as animals trained to do a specific task for their owner. The most common is a guide dog. Service animals, and when I first saw the slide, I'm going, that is not a dog. You're right, it's not. Service animals are allowed in public places and are either a dog or miniature horse that has been fully trained as an accredited facility and have special protection laws. Assistance or emotional need animals. These can be any type of animal and does not need to be individually trained or certified to perform a service. The emotional and or physical benefits from the animal living in the home are what qualify the animal. These are animals that work, assist, and or perform tasks and services for the benefit of a person with disability or provide emotional support that improve the symptoms of a disability. A letter from a medical doctor or therapist is all that's needed to classify the animal as an assistance or emotional needs animal. Examples. An animal can detect a seizure disorder or alert owners to get prepared, alleviates a person's depression or anxiety, reduces a person's stress, induced pain. A bird who alerts a person with a hearing disabilities when someone is at the door. FHA does include a few restrictions where this act does not apply. Check the FHA website for more information. Landlords cannot charge any extra rent or pet deposits, we'll talk more about that, or any other fees due to pet ownership. These types of animals are not considered pets, only security deposit.